Hi there, another DrumWise Meets here, and today I'm here with Kaz Rodriguez. He plays for Shaka Khan, he plays for Josh Groban, and he's also a composer, and he's composed lots of songs for lots of different drummers. So, hi there, Kaz.
Hey, how's it going?
So first of all, Kaz, what equipment are you currently using? When I say currently, obviously, maybe not right at this time, but you know, when you're normally out gigging, what equipment are you using?
So right now, just with Josh Groban, I'm using one of my custom kits over there in LA. It's a Tama Star series kit. So it's a Star Maple, and it has focus rings inside, so the inlay, you know, I love something like, you know, it's got this vintage kind of look to it, and I think it has a modern sound as well, so I just felt it's really good for, sorry, my Siri just went off for some reason.
Mine did that
modern
yesterday.
Sound. Yeah, that's weird. So yeah, the sound of it is you know, it's got such a character. The dynamics are great on it as well. So I use you know, big sizes for that tool, and it depends. Sometimes I have 3 snares, you know, 14, all 2 14s and 1 13, because Josh has like a range of songs. You know, some songs are that kind of funky kind of thing, or you know, policey. There's a song called Alla Luce where he sings in Italian, and you know, and it's got kind of a policey feel, but there's lots of weird time signatures. But it's just one of those things where I have to be able to think like, what sound does this song need to be? And so that Star Maple was what I use. I use a 12-inch as my rack, which was really alienated in my world because I'm known for smaller sizes. But then the 24-inch kick, 24 by 16 floor tom, 18 floor tom, and then I have a gong drum. It's a 20-inch gong drum. It's the first time I actually used it because I felt like, you know, this kit was very kind of inspirational to me for, you know, one of my heroes, Simon Phillips, and you know, I paid homage to kind of that whilst I was, you know, doing all these drummer kind of magazine things. And so I had my front cover with Simon. It was kind of surreal to see his kit, to know that, you know, I had these kind of, you know, loads of toms as well, and it just felt right to have that as well with Josh's rig, where I'm able to change the setup as I like, because I have, you know, an 8, 10, 12 and a 14 snare, which is on my left, but it's also a floor tom, so it's like a changeable snare and a floor tom, so it's by 10, which is kind of the new thing now. A lot of people are using, and then a 13 by 7. My main snare is always is now a Star Reserve. You know, it's by 5, and it's, you know, a lot of people were afraid of using shallower kind of snares, and they feel really nice when they're through the mics. It's a solid snare as well. So yeah, just that for the, and then Speed Cobra pedals is what I pretty much am known for using, because I have big feet, so it's better. And yeah, and I'm changing in between like Dynasync at the moment. You know, all hardware is Tama. Zildjian is my symbol of choice. You know, everybody knows me for using Zildjian, and Zildjian is the best for me. And it, you know, the cymbals I use there are like big sizes as well. Practically using like 3 rides as crashes as well. So I have on my left, I have a Constantinople crash ride, 19-inch, and then on the right I use a sweet 23-inch. So they're quite big. And then on my right, I end up using, it depends, but it's a 24-inch K light ride, which is, you know, it's thin, but I crash it and I crash ride it. I put a rivet on there, and on my right I have this custom. You might have seen on my Zildjian live performance where everyone's been like, "What is this Crash of Doom? That's like massive. This 24-inch with holes in it." That's actually what I use with Josh, but a 22-inch. And the reason for that is because I can still have it as a choice for playing as a ride. A lot of the time using Josh's set, we have to use dynamics. Have to be our best friend. So, this ride, the main ride may not be the right ride for that song. So I have to use the next ride or taking them into sections. And I had to think like that being on that gig rather than bosh. And there's, little bits of articulations. There's no splashes in the gig. We don't do splashes in stadiums. So, doesn't really work for his sort of stuff. And just big hi-hats. I use a prototype hi-hat that Paul Francis made, as well as the custom Crash of Doom. I love experimenting with sounds. So, we do a lot of different things. Also, I have on my left side another kind of crazy crash that we made. And it's just fun. It's fun to play with the sounds that you really feel connected with, and to have Zildjian to really help with that. And sticks, I use my the Kaz Rodriguez signature model, which is again, it's a dream come true because I've always wanted to play. I love both Zildjian sticks and Vic Firth, but watching people like Dennis Chambers had his own, Zildjian stick. So to be on the same roster was it's a great stick, and it's just longer. So it just feels like I can play bigger cymbals and still have control over it. It's 16 3/4 length, so bigger cymbals, and you can put them further away and still have the connection with it, And then Remo heads and Earthworks microphones. That's what I usually use, who I endorse, and that's pretty much it.
What age did you start drumming? What music did you listen to when you were younger? And then who do you think influenced you as a drummer?
So, I started drumming when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And that was just on pots and pans, like anybody else would do, and then I'm self-taught, so I never really had, a lesson per se. I would probably discover things like when dial-up was a thing back then, and Drummer World was pretty much the only way you could look at drum videos for like 30, 60 seconds, and you spend the whole entire day making tabs to wait for a 1-minute clip to download, whether it was Dave Weckl or Simon Phillips, and you come back after school and you're like, yeah, great. And now you can do that in minutes, in seconds.
Absolutely. The kids don't know how lucky they are now with YouTube.
Oh yeah, you have no idea. We went through that struggle.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was listening to a lot of a mix of things, because I was in this phase of learning how to understand music in general, because I was so drawn to it, and I kept on feeling. I just felt and had seen colours, like, which I could never explain to my parents, because I was like, oh, this style of music sounds like blue. And my mum was like, we've got a nut bar as the sun, But then it started to make sense. So as I got old, as I grew up, getting into my teens, I started to listen to a lot of rock music, and I was obsessed with Muse, like when I was a kid. Because they had this thing where they had this classical transition, like a crossover classical pop rock kind of thing, and the movements they had were really drawing to me. And then I started to understand, that I needed to listen to other things as well. So I got into jazz, and I got into this. My high school gave me a scholarship to go to CYM, which was this place called Center for Young Musicians, and you had to give up your Saturdays.
Oh.
So as a teenage kid, and your mates are like, all right, let's play football at the back of the park, and I was always like, yeah, man, let's do it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, lads, I can't make it because I've got to go to this freaking.
That's a good lesson in commitment, though, isn't it?
Exactly. And the reason why I committed was, firstly, was to be able to play drums, because I never got to play a drum kit when I was a teenager. I was just learning and ear drumming all before that, and playing on pillows, and saved up for a pair of sticks. And the thing was, what I learned from there was a valuable lesson. When I went into this place, I wasn't even allowed to play the drums. I had to learn a tuned instrument, and then learn snare drum, just a snare drum, and learn rudiments. And I was not good at that stuff. At that time, I just didn't understand. Reading music and playing was just it was still alienating for me. And to this day, I still can't read, but I learned a lesson where, I could memorize pieces, orchestra pieces, ensemble pieces, because I would just hear someone else play it, and I'll just be like, and then I'll remember it, and I'll pretend I was reading it, and then play it. But the end of the day was, this was a place for me to be disciplined. And I saw this one person who I considered as a mentor. He was a drum teacher there. His name was Mark Bryant, and he taught me a valuable lesson, how to play drums by not actually playing the drums. To be on time, to turn up, to understand principles. So I used to get him sandwiches on the day. He's like, if you get me a sandwich, I'll show you what you need to do this. And then he gave me a pair of marching band sticks. They were like logs, heavy logs. Yeah. So I learned through that, and then I learned so much from that person. Doing the jazz thing, learning how to play soft and dynamic, but just by references. And he said, buy this album, buy that album, and I'll listen. And then he took me to watch Roy Haynes, and then I watched Roy Haynes play at Royal Festival Hall when I was a kid. And it blew my mind away to see such a guy who's played at he's at that age, and he plays so musical, and understood what space meant rather than playing 5,000 notes. And then, I listened to all those styles, but during my childhood, I listened to Simon Phillips a lot, because I was a big fan of Protocol, his band Protocol, and the fact that he wrote his music as well. So that inspired me at a later age to be a composer. So that's influence-wise was definitely Simon Phillips. And as I got older through that phase of life, Chris Coleman and Aaron Spears, who I'm really fortunate, because they're they're some of my best friends, and they seen me grow from, being this kid that had, a goal to try and find something. And they've seen me grow, and they've pushed me more than anyone else has. And, I'm grateful for those guys. And they're one of my inspirations as well, So, yeah.
So when you first get a gig with a new artist, how are you expected to learn the songs? Are you given the sheet music? Are you just sent some audio files? Do you just go on Spotify and just listen to the album? How's that kind of worked in your experience, especially with your current Josh Groban gig, for example?
Yeah. So being with Josh Groban especially, it's a very heavy reading gig. Being in that perspective, when I got the gig, initially they knew that I couldn't read music, but at the same time, I have this way of learning music very quickly because I have synesthesia. So the musical director, Tarek Akoni, again, another inspiration of mine, a guitarist, vocalist, MD, and he said, you bring the people you trust and you trust them. And Josh is one of those high-end gigs where you cannot fail him because he is, you know, he's very good with if something doesn't sound right because he's also a drummer. So,
right. Okay.
Yeah. And he plays very well as well. He always loves playing on my kit. Whenever he gets the time, he goes, Kaz, can play your kit? And I'm like, yeah, sure, man. You know, and he loves drums. He loves writing songs. And that's how I came into that project. You know, they've discovered me through that, through Instagram, actually. And the way that we have to learn music is in different ways. Everyone has formulas to learn. And sometimes it's audible, sometimes it's visual, and sometimes it's a bit of both. Now, being in this gig, I've had to learn more reading and challenge myself because we have to play songs sometimes that, you know, Josh might say, I want to play this song, and we haven't rehearsed it during tour, you know. So during our time off, like if you have days off and we're staying in our hotel or we're on the bus, we have to learn our music. So we have things like Dropbox, or we have things that we get given in time in advance to learn what we can, even with the audio music as well. And what's written on the chart doesn't sometimes mean it's matches to the audio because there might be bars cut, etc. And we have to learn as much as we can, but to know that we are prepared to play it as if it was going to be on the show. And that's the challenge that we face all the time. So reading was definitely a major factor on the Josh gig. However, when we're like on, you know, if I did Shaka Khan recently, when I was with her, it was, you know, to come in for that gig, the keyboard player, Mark Stevens, an incredible keyboard player. You know, he's played with George Duke and, you know, all these guys like Herbie, and he's like a legend. And it's weird because on his own album, he has like Vinnie Caliuta on his own album and Shaka Khan, and, you know, a beautiful human being. But I said to him, you know, there's no charts. He said, there's no charts on this gig. Well, there is charts, but you just want to listen to the music. So I had to do the gig without any rehearsals. I just had to, you know, we're in Washington, DC, and I just played like hoping that it will go for the best. And it worked out really well because I learned the songs, and that's in an audible sense. So there are ways to learn music in multiple ways. And, you know, being in the Josh gig, especially, it's one of those ones where you have to prove to the reason why you're here. And, you know, Josh trusts us, my musical director, you know, trusts us, the band, to be prepped and to be as professional as we can, above professionalism, to be ready for that show. Because we could do Radio City, which we did a few months ago in February, and we played, you know, in front of 6,000 people. And it was, you know, a big, Radio City is a very historical venue. And to do that and just play a show whilst we were doing a tour, you know, we're doing a little tour and then we go straight to Radio City. We've never rehearsed this with stages moving and, you know, turntables and us lifting up from the stage and playing our parts. And everything has to be, it's like a TV show. You have to be ready for cues and stuff, as well as learning parts. These are the challenges that you will face when you're doing big tours like this. And it's actually a good challenge because it keeps you more on focus and actually value things like charts, because charts are now, for me, I value them because they are like a reference for me to go, I'm on the same page as everybody else rather than just going through here. And I did that at the start. I memorized the entire Bridges tour, you know, set in my head, but then realized I needed to use charts because when they start making edits, I need to remember that. And that's why it's good for you to have that for reference.
And when you're saying charts, so you're not necessarily meaning like written out drum music, you're meaning a structure of the song. So intro, 8 bars, verse, 16, and so on. It's just a roadmap of the song.
Yeah, roadmap. And I actually do it differently where nobody would understand, but I actually chart on written music, basically, because I find a system now where I'll be like, 4/4 or 7/7 or 5, whatever, but I actually chart colors on the bars.
Okay.
So that's how I remember where that goes here. This section's blue and this section's, so I kind of color code my thing because I'm weird. But
that's really cool. It's interesting. I used to very much do that, but in a different way. So if I was learning a chart, when I was first doing it, I would color code all of the repeats in orange, all of the crashes in pink, dynamics and stuff like that green.
Yeah.
So open hi-hats yellow, so that everything had its own color. So even now, an open hi-hat to me is yellow. Like So, but that's just because I picked those colors ages ago, and I've kind of stuck with it. And my students that do, my students specifically, not so much the other DrumWise students, teachers, but when they're doing grades, they'll have yellow open hi-hats in their book and pink crashes. So I'm kind of like forcing it on them, whether that's the right or not. But I totally know what you mean about about the colors helping. I don't see it in the same way as you, but they're massively helpful.
Yeah, everyone's got their own way of seeing color, and with me, it just works in a musical and a learning sense and creating sense. When I write music, I just see colors, and I can relate a color to a chord, and that's how I write music. And that's how it's worked with Josh, where I'm able to do things on the fly because he brings people in that same perspective, where I'm able to write and compose, through colors, and he finds that valuable to the band and as a thing for me to be part of that family. So I'm really grateful for that.
When you're playing live, do you use much in the way of electronics?
Yes, actually quite a lot. Josh's new record is quite electronic heavy, and when I came into the band, they wanted someone who was really electronic, savvy, and and I came in, I was using SPSX at the start, and then I moved into using a TM6 Pro trigger module, which I was lucky to help co-develop along with Michael Shack and the guys at Japan and Chris Whitten. So that was a fun thing to use on stage, and the triggering module is really great because I'm able to change sounds that I want from the record, and I can pitch things up or lower, or add effects. If something needs a bit more reverb, I can add it naturally onto the module rather than the engineer trying to do it himself. So I use that a lot for my kicks and my snares. So if I needed to add a bit more like that sound, and it's great because I have direct individual channel outs to go to the engineer, but he can control individual triggers rather than everything's just left and right. Mono. I can give him stereo, and it's such a great tool to have. I'm renowned for being a hybrid drummer, and hybrid is something that I live by because you could play just acoustic, but when you're doing the pop gig or the gig for, like artists like Josh, it's really important to, the effect that you have by playing electronics as well gives you a human feel rather than, what's the point on having a drum machine and a drummer when you can just have both at the same time. And it gives us a chance to play, to keep working, because it's always this thing, unless you're that drummer who likes to play against loops, great, but you're never going to be like this, and to have it within your playing really has something special, and it inspires you to play a specific way. Like right now you have your TD50 in front of you, and what that actually helps is being able to change sounds to different styles of music, adding samples, and actually to be able to be versatile when you add it to an acoustic kit. And that's what I do. At home I have my TD50 and I'm tracking, or I'm recording at home, or I'm doing sample packs, and I can do those individually through that, where you know, rather than spending thousands of pounds going into a studio trying to emulate stuff, you know. Oh, I want to play a time, you know, play like a nice simple groove, and then you're going to edit the hell out of it to make it sound like an electronic sound. You don't need to do that. You can do it with an electronic kit. So yeah.
What a great piece of kit this is. Just amazing.
Absolutely.
What are your hobbies away from drumming?
Good question. Cooking.
Nice.
Yeah, I've always been a food fanatic. I'm always like, you know, wherever I am in the world on tour or whatever, I'm always watching MasterChef. Always.
Oh, what that level of cooking? Like
yeah. Well, I love, you know, I cook a lot at home. You know, I cook a lot for my girlfriend, and when I'm cooking, when I'm away from tour, I like to make lots of nice food, and when she's happy, I'm like, yes, I've, you know, done a good job. And I love doing that stuff, and you know, it's therapy for me. And also, you know, spending time with the family and especially your loved ones, and I'm always away on the road, so you know, doing life is the best musical lesson I can have, because it gives me inspiration to do great things after it when I'll get back into it. So, you know, cooking is my I love cooking, and I love, you know, I've been, I don't know, my girlfriend's probably like more annoyed at the fact that I play Zelda a lot now, because she opened up the gate that she cannot close. But, you know, I'm a massive gamer now, like, I mean, but it's just, you know, it's nice to do things that aren't music related, and, you know, you know, I like to, you know, exercise as well, and, you know, exercise, staying healthy, especially at these times, and it's those sort of things are just key, because it keeps your mind clear. So
you mentioned gaming. A lot of our students are heavily into, you know, Fortnite, for example, like massive.
God.
And like they're all off school and they're spending all their time on Fortnite and not enough time practicing. And
yes,
a big thing I say is, yes, it's enjoyable playing on the game, but when you're running around with your imaginary little gun with your imaginary little person, that's not going to get you anywhere in life. Whereas if you spend a little bit of the time on Fortnite on this real thing that's going to actually get you somewhere in life, you know, you have drum lessons, you've said to me you want to be a pro drummer, so do it. So like, how would you balance your time, like gaming and like practice?
well, the way I would do it is just set yourself a certain amount of hours. I mean, I don't play games every day. I just kind of, you know, your mind needs, you always have to commit to practice, like practice every day if you can. I don't get much practice in as much as I can, but I try to hit two birds with one stone. So I'll like walk for, you know, it's almost about 5 miles to walk to my studio. So I walk to my studio there and back. So I've done my cardio and I'm drumming at the same time. So, and I have to practice. Not many people have that, you know, fortunate kind of situation. So, you know, make sure that you are practicing or commit at least an hour a day or a couple of hours on just rudiments, and then just crack on. But don't, you know, I think it's balance is the most important thing. And, you know, I've seen, you know, I've got, you know, a nephew who's obsessed with that as well, like Fortnite and computer games. But it's important to create balance. And it all comes down to discipline. So like, if you say, practice your paradiddles for an hour, then crack on. You can do what you need to do. But always know that if you want to be better at what you're doing, play this, play this kit. You know,
play more drums and a little bit less time on Fortnite.
A bit less time on the computer games. Yes.
Probably the most important question of this interview with you, Kaz. What's your favourite biscuit?
Oh my God, I love the fact that you asked this question. That's amazing. You know what it is? It's a rich tea.
Oh, another one for rich tea. I'm going to make a little graph afterwards. Russ Gilbrook said rich tea the other day.
Mate, rich tea. You know what? There's something about a rich tea in a milk tea.
Oh.
And then you just dip that in, and it's that soft,
Oh,
That absorption is just the right amount. It's either that or the rich tea fingers, but I realised the biscuit is better.
yeah. So you're a dunker then. So
I'm a dunker, mate.
yeah,
I'm a dunker.
got to be done.
It's got to be done. It's wrong if you don't.
If you could give one bit of advice to up and coming drummers, what would
It would be just to make sure you stay humble and actually be willing to learn, because there's no, once you start doing things, especially with teachers, when a teacher doesn't feel like, once you've stepped into a place in your drumming, you always got something to learn. I've always got something to learn. A lot of people say, might say, oh man, you're like amazing, you're the best, and blah, blah, blah. But that's never the case. No one's the best. You're always learning. And I'm always learning. I'm in the studio wanting to learn. I'm actually going to be in my studio because I have a foot cowbell here. I'm going to learn claves because I'm like, I want to learn that, because, I want to get back to those things. And whilst I have the time, I'm learning how to record, or there's always something to learn. And also listen to the people that who are pushing. Like, you're teaching lots of students, and anybody who wants to be somewhere in their career, they have to know that it's not a race. For me, it was surely not a race, but certain things have happened quickly for me. And be a human being. Enjoy your craft, learn your music, find something that you find passionate about doing it, and then, do videos. It's such a massive accomplishment by being in front of a drum kit, videoing yourself playing to a song or just playing something, mixing it, and then putting it out there just to see what happens. I think something magic happens there where you actually get a bit of appreciation from public. And some people may give you pointers, but when they do, that's the best lesson you can get, because, ignore the trolls. Everybody knows there's drum trolls out there. But the fact is that there is a way for you to have support from the world rather than just having support from one person or self-criticism. So, that's how it worked for me. I, have been doing it since I was in college. So I wouldn't stop doing it. I just keep playing, and people enjoy what I do. So I'm going to keep doing it. If people don't enjoy it, there are other people that will. So, keep doing what you're doing.
Amazing. Kaz,
no worries.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us today here at DrumWise. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Likewise, mate.
Stay safe.
DrumWise, mate.